Hi, thanks for joining me here on another Facebook Live. This is actually going to be our last Facebook Live event of the season. I'm going to be taking a break. I'm going to be going out on leave for a little bit over the summer. I'll be coming back midsummer and probably coming back to Facebook Live either sometime late summer or maybe even in the fall. So I'm going to miss you all, but I hope we'll stay connected. And to get to today's live event, I'm going to be talking a little bit about what is the difference between mindful eating and intuitive eating. First, I want to introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Alexis Conason. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm in private practice here in New York City. I'm also the founder of the Anti-Diet Plan, and the Anti-Diet Plan is a 6-week virtual program. It's designed to help people get off of the diet, overeating, self-hatred roller coaster. If anyone has ever been a chronic dieter, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And we use the tools of mindful eating to help us get reattuned with our bodies and develop a more peaceful way of eating and a more peaceful way of relating with ourselves. And as I talk a little bit more about mindful eating, I think that you'll start to understand how that can help us develop a more peaceful sense of being with ourselves and with our bodies and with food. So I'm glad to see a lot of people joining me live. Feel free to say hello. And if you have any questions or comments or want to join in the discussion, I'm going to be following the comment box. So please feel free to do so. So one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, what's the difference between mindful eating and intuitive eating? So intuitive eating is a very popular program. It's a very similar kind of approach and philosophy to food. It's another non-restrictive eating plan. And because mindful eating and intuitive eating are so similar, I think that people can get confused of what's the difference between the two philosophies. And, are they the same? I've heard some people saying they can be used interchangeably. I don't think that's exactly the case. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think some of the differences are between mindful eating and intuitive eating. So intuitive eating is a philosophy based on the book by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Retch, and their book is called Intuitive Eating. It's a fabulous book. I really recommend everybody go out there and pick it up if you're not familiar with it. And they outline 10 principles in their book. And those guidelines, that philosophy set out in intuitive eating is what I think of as intuitive eating. It is those 10 principles that they lay out in the book. Now, mindful eating, in contrast, isn't based on any one person's philosophy. So it's not like it's based off of one specific book, although there's a number of books on the topic. It's not based on one specific person's philosophy. Rather, it is a way of eating and a way of relating to our body that is evolved from mindfulness meditation and mindfulness traditions and Buddhist practices. So it's, I think of it as, a little bit, I guess it could be a little bit less defined even, because it's not like a specific program that's set forth in a book the way that intuitive eating is, but rather it's a way of being. It's a way of relating to food, relating to your body. And really what mindful eating is using the principles of mindfulness meditation, which is being fully present and aware in the current moment with a sense of non-judgmental observation and awareness. And I also include with a sense of compassion for ourselves, because I think compassion is a really key part of mindfulness. And I think it's something that's really important to hold in mind as we start to practice mindful eating. So it's about using that sense of being fully aware and present in the current moment with a sense of non-judgment and self-compassion and acceptance, and applying it to our relationship with food and our body. So the way that I teach mindful eating, we do a lot of focus on recognizing the signs, the internal wisdom that our body's giving us. Things like our signals of hunger, fullness, making choices around food, what our body craves, how our body reacts to certain foods, understanding kind of the physical needs that our body has. So using the tools of mindfulness meditation to tune into that. Now, intuitive eating similarly also goes into, recognizing hunger and fullness and, making choices around foods, and some philosophies that seem very similar, but it doesn't have as a focus on mindfulness meditation. So mindful eating really uses the base of mindfulness meditation to help us get more attuned with our body. So I think of this as that our body comes equipped with a internal GPS system, like our bodies, like the navigation the navigation system that you might have in your car. Our body has an internal navigation system, but we tend to be really out of touch with it. So mindfulness, I think, is the really powerful tool that helps us tune into our body to actually be able to hear what our body's telling us. And now the first step to practicing either intuitive eating or mindful eating is moving away from diet culture, because as long as we are stuck in a sense of restriction and kind of fighting against our body, it's very difficult to hear what our body's telling us, and we're going to eat according to these external rules and what foods we think are good or bad are going to make us gain weight or lose weight or are healthy or not healthy, whatever the rules are. There's so many of them. They're different for all of us, but they all are kind of these external things that we use to guide our eating. And there's a sense of safety often in these rules, that we think that by holding on to these rules, it's going to help us feel in control of our eating. But in fact, like, the very opposite is true. The more that we hold on to those rules, the more out of control we tend to feel. So mindful eating and intuitive eating, again, this is, something that I think they both have in common, is this sense of letting go of those outside rules, letting go of dieting, and learning to trust ourselves and really trust that our bodies have the wisdom to guide us. One of the other things that I think is similar in both mindful eating and intuitive eating is they both embrace a non-restrictive approach to food. So again, it's not about eating certain foods or healthy foods or these foods are good or these foods are bad, but rather really lessening the emotional value that we hold around foods, lessening the moral value, and just looking at food as food. In mindful eating, we do a lot of focus on food as food. When we allow ourselves to actually eat whatever we want, whenever we want it, which sounds really radical, we're able to tune in to what we actually want and when do we actually want it. So that's the piece of mindful eating, is using that sense of being aware and present to actually listen to and start to decipher in a totally new way, like, what do we want and when do we want it? Because when we're stuck in dieting and diet culture, we tend to eat in according to, I'm going to eat what the diet says, or screw it, I'm going to eat everything the diet doesn't say. And what do we actually want? It's totally lost. So that, I think, is some of the ways that I see mindful eating and intuitive eating as being different. In terms of intuitive eating is based on the 10 principles by Elise Retch and Evelyn Tribole that's laid out in their book, Intuitive Eating. It doesn't really have a focus on mindfulness meditation. Now, I think that, mindfulness meditation could and often is incorporated into their program. And I've heard that they are believers in mindfulness meditation as well, so that they endorse those practices. But as far as I understand, it's not explicitly laid out as a foundation of their book. Whereas mindful eating is all about mindfulness meditation. I teach mindful eating, and we do a lot of formal meditation practice. We do a seated, like a core practice of the program is a seated guided meditation of breath. I think that we have to build that actual mindfulness meditation foundation to be able to use any of the skills that we're going to, be honing in on in mindful eating. Because without that sense of being present and without cultivating a, stance of non-judgment and compassion towards ourselves, it's very, very difficult to be able to actually tune into what we're trying to tune into, which is our body's, innate wisdom of hunger, fullness, guiding our food choices, what foods we enjoy, what our body needs, right? Like, when does our body need food? When does it need movement? When does it need rest? When does it need something totally different? As well as, from a psychological perspective, I also think that mindfulness is a really powerful tool to tune into our emotions and start to observe our emotions and kind of lessen some of the fear around our emotions and drop the narrative around our feelings, because we tend to have our feelings and then we have like the whole story that we build up around our feelings and why our feelings are bad or dangerous or scary. And that sense of just observing without judgment, that sadness isn't necessarily good or bad, it just is. And what does that feel like? That's another really important part of how I teach mindful eating. As a psychologist, I incorporate the emotional components as well, because I think that often our relationship with food, food is not just fuel. It's a source of pleasure, it's a source of reward, it's a source of punishment, it's a source, we play out all kinds of dynamics in our life around food, especially when issues around food have been passed down throughout the generations and family stuff comes up. So we have to deal with the emotional piece too. And I think mindfulness has been so valuable in addressing that as well. So, just to sum up, mindful eating, I think, really is, based on that. Mindfulness meditation, that's the foundation of mindful eating. And, the foundation of intuitive eating is the book Intuitive Eating. And it doesn't have as much of a foundation on mindfulness meditation. So mindful eating is more grounded in like a Buddhist philosophy, in mindfulness practices, compassion, acceptance, all of these kinds of things that we think of with Buddhist mindfulness practice. And, one thing that I just want to mention briefly before we close out for today is that we have to be very cautious, because I think both of these terms can get really co-opted by diet culture. So what we see is, mindful eating has become really trendy, and now all of a sudden it's like everybody's doing mindful eating. And I remember in an article that came out, I think last year or 2 years ago, there was an interview with Oprah saying how Weight Watchers is mindful eating. And like, no, Weight Watchers is not mindful eating. Weight Watchers is a diet plan. Anything that is going to encourage you to restrict your eating or use these external things to guide our eating, like points or a list of foods or foods that are permissible or not permissible, that is not mindful eating. Mindful eating is about trusting your body. It is about listening to your body's internal wisdom and accepting yourself as we are right now in this current moment. It's not about hating ourselves. It's not about feeling not good enough about ourselves. It doesn't come up from a place of weight loss. I think as soon as we bring weight loss in, we lose the essence of mindful eating, which is about compassion and eating in ways that are nurturing to ourselves. And when we're trying to lose weight, we are inherently working against our bodies. We're inherently fighting ourselves. So I think that we have to just be really cautious about the ways that mindful eating has gotten co-opted in the media and with the popularity of different diet programs. Anything that's endorsing weight loss, in my opinion, really isn't true mindful eating. I think it brings us away from the essence of mindfulness and mindful eating. And same goes with intuitive eating. I know that the authors of Intuitive Eating released a statement recently saying that intuitive eating is completely incompatible with any kinds of weight loss programs. And they released this because the term intuitive eating, again, as it's getting more and more popular, is being used to promote diet programs. And I mean, like, yay that these things are becoming so popular, and mindful eating and intuitive eating are really coming into the mainstream. But of course, the downside of that is seeing these different diet programs using the terminology, and this can be really confusing to people. So, neither mindful eating or intuitive eating is about weight loss. They're both programs that are about non-restrictive eating and about making peace with food and making peace with our bodies and really learning a radically different way to relate to ourselves. So if you're interested in learning more about mindful eating, you can check out my free 5-day program, the Anti-Diet Plan. We have the 6-week signature course, which if you really want to just like dive right into mindfulness and mindful eating, you can check out the free, the 6-week signature course, which is not free. You can read about that on the antidietplan.com. And that program involves, you'll get lots of mindfulness meditations. You'll get the guided meditation of breath. You get guided eating meditations, self-compassion meditations and resources, things about acceptance and body acceptance, and resources about leaving behind diet culture and how to actually hear our body, how to listen to hunger and fullness, and use our body to guide our food choices, and integrating movement in a way that feels really enjoyable and pleasurable, and how to just have more pleasure in our lives overall. So if you're interested in really diving all in, check out my 6-week signature program, the Anti-Diet Plan. And then if you just want a taste of mindfulness and mindful eating and kind of just curious of like what mindful eating is, I encourage you to sign up for my free 5-day course. It's 5 emails that you'll get, one each day, and you'll get that, a brief mindfulness meditation to get started integrating your mindfulness meditation practice into your daily routine. I think it's like a 3-minute meditation. We don't need to be sitting on the cushion for 20 minutes or 30 minutes every day to be able to be getting the benefits of meditation. Even just starting to integrate a brief meditative period is starting to build that foundation of mindfulness practice. So if you're interested in that, and then we will talk a little bit more about what is mindful eating in that program. So you can sign up for that on my website, drconneson.com. And I want to thank everybody for joining me. Again, this is going to be our last live event until probably late summer or the fall. I'm going to be going out on leave, and I hope you'll stay in touch. I'm going to be staying active on social media. I am on Instagram at the Anti-Diet Plan, on Facebook here, Alexis Conneson Psy.D, Twitter at Conneson Psy.D, and email info@drconneson.com. So I hope we'll stay in touch, and I will look forward to seeing you in the fall. Thanks for joining me. Bye.